Hello! We are almost done with Jake Drake Know It All by Andrew Clements. We are on chapter 11 Winners. You ready? Here we go. Then came the weekend before the science fair. Willie and I spent all Saturday and Sunday finishing our posters. We planned what we would say to the judges. We planned how to explain our conclusion. We also had to be ready to explain our method. That's the part where we tested our idea. Judges can ask any questions they want about any part of the project. So you know what you have to be. You have to be a know-it-all. And at least about your own project. Unless you have a good partner like Willie, then you could be a know it about half. when Willie and I were ready, we remembered to buy 4 new batteries so the magnets would work just right. On the Tuesday of the science fair, we brought our project to the school gym at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That was part of the rules. We had an hour and a half to get everything ready. Then the judge would start at 6:30. The gym was like a pot of water on a stove. The whole place felt like it was humming and bubbling, getting ready to boil over. Kids were everywhere, and so were parents. Both my dad and Willie's dad came along to help us hang up our posters. Willie's dad had gone to an office store for us. He got one of those tall cardboard fold up things. It was just about the right size to hold all 3 posters. There were numbered tables in rows and down the floor, and there was a list of names by the door. Next to everyone's name, there was a number, and ours was 45. Table number 45 was a good one, right along the back wall, except that it was next to table number 46. And table number 46 was Kevin Young's table. It was hard not to look at Kevin's stuff. He had 3 posters just like ours, except his didn't look like ours. We had used markers to write the biggest words on our posters. We had used colored pencils and crayons to make our drawings. We had written out our words by hand, not Kevin. All the writing on his poster had been printed out from a computer, and so had his pictures. All the papers and letters and pictures had been glued onto Kevin's poster. We had glued some of our things on our posters too, but we had some drawings and great pictures of a junkyard electromagnet holding up a crushed car. It's hard to glue stuff right, so sometimes some of our pictures had some little bumps and ridges on them, and so did our writing papers. Not Kevin's. I don't know how we did it, but every picture on his writing was glued down perfectly flat. My dad looked at Kevin's posters. He nodded to Kevin's dad and said, "Great posters." Kevin's dad looked a lot like Kevin. He had the same red hair and blue eyes. He smiled at my dad and said, "Thanks. We worked pretty hard on them." See that? How Kevin's dad said we, I looked around at the other projects near us, and most of them looked like grown-ups had helped too. It didn't seem very fair. All of a sudden, I wished that I had let my dad help us because deep down, I still thought it'd be nice to win that Blundonium 12 computer. Kevin looked over at our stuff once or twice, and I thought I saw him smile a little. But it wasn't a nice smile. It was one of those put down smiles. Yeah. But we had too much to do to think about Kevin for very long. We got our magnets wired up. We got our cans of soup and tuna stacked up. We laid out our notebooks and our method records, and when everything was set up, we had 40 minutes left over. So our dads took us out for hamburgers and chocolate shakes. The food was good, but Willie and I were pretty nervous. At 6:30, the judges started. There were 6 of them, science and math teachers from the junior high school. First, they all just walked together up and down the rows. Then they started at a table number 72, the last table, and we waited and waited and waited and waited and wait. It took a long time for the judges to get to our row. Then it was another 10 minutes before they got to Kevin at table 46. It was good to hear the judges ask questions before it was our turn, and Kevin was good at answering them. He really was. He had done this experiment making ants learn how to go through a maze. He wanted to show that if ants can't smell, they get lost. Ants leave ever something like an odor where they walk. And if one ant goes through the maze, it leaves a trail so the others can follow. So after one ant went through the maze, Kevin let another one go and it followed the same path. Then he painted the maze with lemon juice, let it dry, let another ant go through. The second ant got lost. So Kevin proved his hypothesis was right. It was a good project. Even if Kevin did get help from his dad, then it was our turn. The lady judge started, and she asked Willie to explain what he wanted to prove. Willie pointed out to our posters and told how electromagnets work and how he wanted to see what made a bigger difference, more wire or more power. It was great. Willie smiled and sounded like he was having fun because he was, and I could tell the judges liked that. Then it was my turn. I had to explain our method. I took it slow, step by step. And then while I talked, Willie hooked up the red magnet to the batteries and lifted up 2 cans of tuna. Then he added 2 more batteries and picked up 4 cans of tuna. Then Willie took over talking. I hooked up 2 batteries to the blue magnet, the one that had more wire on it, and the 2 batteries and blue magnet would pick up 4 cans. And with 4 batteries, it picked up 8 cans of tuna. I could tell the judges liked what we were doing. Our results were different from what we had thought they would be, but we explained in all of our conclusion, if explained it all in our conclusion, just right. We used a scientific method. It was a good experiment. Kevin was watching too, but I could tell what he was thinking. He didn't smile or frown. He hardly even blinked. Then it was over, and I felt great, and it felt great. I looked at Willie, and he had that smile on his face, that really big one, and right then I knew I didn't care if I won anything or not. The judges moved on. Then it was time for more waiting and more waiting, so Willie and I went looking around. There was a lot of neat stuff to see. There were projects about cameras, about fruit, earthworms, carbon dioxide from plants, fruit flies, fossils, hot air balloons, soap balloons, different kinds of sand, and a really great one on electric guitar sounds, and tons more. We found Marcia's table, but we didn't go over. That's because she looked sad and kind of mad too. She might start crying or yelling or something. Her posters look great. There was an upside down cake pan inside a box with a window cut on the inside. The pan was hanging above a little light bulb. I could tell from the posters that the pan had some grass growing from it. Willie said, "What's wrong with her?" I shrugged and didn't say anything, but I thought I knew why. Maybe it was because if you always feel like you have to be the best, it's hard. Because a lot of the time, someone else does just as well or even better. Anyway, we kept walking. We looked at all the third grade projects. After I saw them all, I knew which one was going to win. There wasn't any question about it. About a half an hour later, it was time for the announcements. Everyone went into the auditorium. Will and I sat in the 10th row, and our dad sat behind us. Mr. Lenny Cordo was there, and all the computer boxes were stacked up on the stage. It was pretty exciting. The judges announced the 5th grade winners. First, Ellen Stone won the grand prize. She'd done the project about the electric guitar sounds, and a second place went to Mark Nixon for a project about temperature and soap bubbles. The 4th grade winner was Charles Leclerc. He had studied the hardness of different kinds of rocks. And second place went to Amy Martin's project about veins in leaves. Then it was time for the 3rd grade. My dad put his hand on my shoulder. He gave me a little squeeze, and the winner was Pete Morris, just like I knew it would be. Pete had done this project about insect eggs and about how daylight hours make eggs hatch. He had found some praying mantis eggs. He'd put some lights on a timer and had made the eggs hatch 2 months early. It was like he tricked them with the light. And there was this big glass box with about 20 baby praying mantises in it, walking around on their little green legs. The great thing was that Pete had started his project back in October. That was almost 3 months before Mrs. Carp announced the scientific fair. He was doing the project to try to be better or smarter than anyone else, and he didn't do it to try to win a new computer. He did it because he really wanted to figure out something out. Like I said, Pete's a science kid. Will and I were standing up clapping for Pete. Then the head judge said, and second place in the third grade goes to Phil Willis and Jake Drake for the project on electromagnets. Then they called all of us up onto the stage, and we had to shake hands with judges and with Mrs. Carb and Mr. Lenny Cordo. And Willie and I each got a little silver trophy that said second place, first annual Dupree Elementary School Science Fair. It was the best thing I had ever won, and it wouldn't have been half as fun without Willie. Smiling his biggest smile, we went back to the gym to take our project apart. Kevin and his dad were there at a table. 46. His dad looked kind of mad, but Kevin didn't. He said, nice trophy. I said, thanks. I thought your project was really good. Kevin said, I guess. Too bad that we didn't win first place. I said, yeah. But really, I didn't think it was too bad. I was happy with second place. And here's why. You see, Pete's project was the best. He would have won no matter what. The second place, maybe I could have won second place all by myself, but I don't think so. Willie did a lot to make the project better. Plus, we had fun. Plus, we did it ourselves. The best part of our science fair was that suddenly it was all over. I didn't have to think about it anymore. I didn't have to keep track of all those papers and batteries and pieces of wire. When we took everything apart, Willie kept the blue magnet and I took the one with the red wire. Whenever I open my junk drawer now, there it is. But the trophy is on my shelf. I keep it there to remind myself that there's one thing I never want to be again, ever, and that's Jake Drake, Know It All. Well, that was a great book. We'll talk to you soon.